brief introduction and then just really want to have a deep conversation here. I think once again, this is couldn't be a more fitting time. I know of a number of friends. Oh, there is the echo that have lost their homes already. So I actually grew up in SoCal, Orange County, and lived in LA for many years. Worked in LA, worked in Hollywood. We have many people we know who have lost their homes already. So it's insane.
Maui is really close to. Sorry, hang on.
Many people we know. There we go. There's the echo. We know we're live, everybody. Hey, give us a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, we're here with Shane, Buell, and Traci Derwin. I'm going to hit record and fire this bad boy up. This is a very, very important podcast today, and it would seem like this is an emergency cast, but actually this was planned. So universe is playing this out appropriately for our audience today. So here we go. Give me a second. I'm going to hit record. And thanks again, guys, for coming on with us today. We really appreciate you coming on, especially Traci, with you in the line of fire right now, literally reporting live pretty much from Palisades Fire. So really appreciate you making time for us today.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with my good buddy, Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from the great state of Jefferson, where freedom still reigns supreme. Up here on the glorious Smith River, it's actually looks like almost like a spring day today, Bear. We went from torrential downpour for weeks on end to dry winds, which we'll be talking about today. And the mysterious fog even hit where I was snowboarding on Monday. You might hear it a bit in my nose. We were in 10-foot visibility, all of a sudden fog on the mountain, which can happen, can be natural. But immediately coming down the mountain, I started getting a tickle in my throat.
Yeah, that's another issue that we won't talk about today, but it's part of what we consider a full-on assault on the people of the world. I'm going to be on with Jean Nolan on his Inspire channel first week of February, and we're going to be presenting some doctor solutions for people that are getting sick with this fog and everything. And on our end in the Pacific Northwest, we don't want to elaborate too much, but they spray like clockwork right before every rain, and then everybody gets sick as soon as it rains. And then this last week, we had the river fog here, and any kind of moisture in the air seems to concentrate with their spraying up there, whatever they're doing. And then everybody got sick a few days ago, too. So separate subject, but actually kind of related for those. And our audience is very educated. They know what's going on. So, Mike, why don't you do the intro and we'll get into this.
Awesome. Yeah, it couldn't be a more fitting time to have Traci and Shane on the show. This, like I was saying before I hit record, believe it or not, this is not an emergency broadcast. This was actually pre-scheduled. And it's like universe just dished this up for us. Wow. So let's get into it. Scorched Earth warfare is nothing new. Fire has historically been the preferred weapon to commandeer coveted land. Marauding soldiers with torches on horseback left nothing to the imagination of those witnessing their villages, crops, and kinsmen succumbing to utter destruction. Present-day predators, however, orchestrate mayhem behind a cowardly veil of stealth and plausible deniability. This new army merges high-tech mercenaries and compromised institutions at the local level, while media propagandists provide the cover. The synchronous anomalies of the ubiquitous fires plaguing Northern California, Canada, and now Southern California and Los Angeles as we speak have sparked a mass awakening to one inescapable conclusion. This is a land grab. The land grab in the Hawaiian Islands began in 1898 with the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy without the consent from the native Hawaiian population. The annexation was achieved through a joint resolution of Congress, not a formal treaty, rendering it lawfully invalid. Now, they want it all. The transparently weaponized Maui fire of August 8th, 2023, and the implementation of smart growth redevelopment plans on multiple islands without the consent of island inhabitants once again leaves nothing to the imagination. Traci Derwin is a native of Hawaii who had a wake-up call after the Lahaina fires, compelling her to take action. She has co-authored Sound the Alarm that walks the reader from the scene of the crime towards a 30,000-foot view of why this fire was allowed to happen, where other copycat fires have happened, and what communities are next. The authors use Maui, Hawaii to illustrate a larger globalist plan for grabbing land, removing private property, and robbing global citizens of their sovereignty. Traci conducts regular interviews on her YouTube channel, Brush Junkie, with guests that have compiled data and images, piecing together the Lahaina fires puzzle while seeking accountability from Maui administrators and law enforcement. We also have her co-author, Shane Buell, with us today. Nice to have you both on. Today, we're going to go deep into the Maui situation, where we are now, and use it as a framework to see what's going on with LA. Bear Lando, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, you guys, Traci and Shane, for being with us. And the Maui fire really broke my heart. You know, it's my children's home. It's where Maui welcomed us for many, many years. My wife and myself both intended to return there someday. And, we have been actively searching real estate, in both the north end of the Big Island and Maui. And something very interesting happened just a week ago, where we saw all these available properties we've been looking at forever. And all of a sudden, they're all sold. And, there's no way that happens on these listings where in one day, like 20 prime properties are all gone the same day. So somebody is trying to buy up everything. I could name some names that I suspect, but it's all part of the land grab. And, just the thought of Lahaina, we have so many cherished memories there. We'd on weekends go there with the family and surf at Puamana. It's where my kids learned how to surf. And, see a show down on Front Street in Lahaina afterwards. And, just nice family memories. And I don't even want to go there because I can't imagine, and we have a lot of friends there, native Hawaiians who, call themselves auntie and uncle to our, kids. And it's just heartbreaking. One more little anecdote. Back a few decades ago, I was really intimately involved with the Hawaiian sovereignty movement. And that's because we brought some lawful, or let's just say law information to the forefront. And then we were also involved in an effort to help finance Hawaiians who were struggling and working 3 jobs. And that's another whole adventure that ended with the FBI coming in and stealing all the money that we were, amassing to actually help people. And so, they don't want people thriving and prospering. And now, we have all the homeless in Maui, native Hawaiians who actually still had properties from their lineage in Lahaina. They aren't allowed to return home. So, I can't say enough. It brought tears to my eyes when I first, was confronted with what happened. So we want to hear from you. And, both of you have really been on the forefront of exposing and helping wake people up to what's going on. When I first wrote that little intro, I titled it, "When Do We Call It War?" Because this is fifth, sixth, generational warfare. So if either one of you could start and maybe just introduce yourself a little bit to our audience as far as how you got involved with this, and then go into maybe a little timeline of the pieces of the puzzle that you put together to help you conclude certain things that are going on. So thank you again, both, for being with us. Maybe Traci, why don't you start it off, and then you and Shane go back and forth. Mike and I will maybe add a little color commentary, along the way from our own experience. But we want to hear from you today. So thank you.
Sure. And thank you, Mike and Bear, for having us on. I take any opportunity to spread the word and let people know what really happened that day, because the Maui story got buried extremely fast. I think there were maybe only 4 or 5 channels even speaking on the truth, and it's even less now. But what got me started was just I was just hearing things. I think my mom. So I was born and raised on Oahu. I'm not from Maui, but I've been living in California for over 25 years now. But I still consider Hawaii my home. And when I heard that the entire town of Lahaina burned down in a matter of hours, I mean, I just, from the beginning, it just didn't sound right, just knowing from what the environment is, what things are like, and all the information coming in about the roadblocks, the lack of water, the lack of sirens, none of that made sense. And I just started to get more angry, and seeing those images of people that remind me of my home, running from this, suffering, losing everything they had, knowing that a lot of people did not survive. I know the death count is officially around 100, but we strongly believe the number is much, much higher. And we have evidence of that, that the numbers are at least in the 400 to 500 range. But at the time, I was doing a beauty channel. So I spoke about makeup and makeup brushes, and that was my thing. And I was not awake. I was still, watching liberal news stations and just kind of casually watching the news. But this was my wake up call. And I started to dig into this. And the more I learned, the more I realized that this was a very nefarious, orchestrated event. And since then, so it's been about a year and a half now, I completely flipped my channel from a beauty channel to I guess, weather regarding fires, storms, even hurricanes, and just really digging into what's really happening. And we just spoke to Dane Wigington about geoengineering and how this all fits in with the chemtrails and or stratospheric aerosol injection. I'm trying to change my vocabulary here, but I mean, there was just so much evidence looking at the aftermath, all the blue items left, all the metal that was missing, the way the cars are left without door handles, without gas caps, with the glass completely melted. I can go on and on about that, but it was just starting to look like this was a mass murder event. It wasn't just a casualty event. I know a lot of people think it's just a lack of emergency management, but it goes far deeper than that. And we've gone so far into looking into the background of the police chief, looking where he came from, and kind of putting everything together and how they pulled this off. And I don't think they're pulling it off, but they're continuing forward to grab this land. And we now are seeing the 15-minute city or the smart city come together. The area is still guarded unless you have a residency in that area. You can't go there. You cannot film. You cannot talk to people. You can't yeah, you really can't air anything that's happening in that militarized zone. And everything is just so horrible. And the real tragedy is that the majority of people have moved on. They're talking about other things. There are even people on the island of Maui that barely even know what happened. And so I really dedicated myself to keeping the story alive so people don't forget and know that a lot of people, including many children, are no longer with us. And we will never hear their story. We might not even know their names because some entire families were killed during this event. So since then, I've noticed so many other events that mirror what happened in Maui. And I just really want to keep that story alive because there is so much evidence. There is so much, and that's why we wrote a book. We wanted to make sure we documented all this so that people have somewhere to reference when this happens again. We can say, this has happened before, and to kind of give people a way to look for the signs of these orchestrated events. So that's kind of how I got started. And about a year ago, Shane provided some research that he was doing on his end. I'll let him share his personal connection to Maui, but he brought in more of the technical, scientific expertise that I was lacking. And my specialty is more of the cultural, political aspect of what's going on. So, yeah, together we've been able to put a lot of things together, but we're still learning every day. We uncover more, and I gain a better understanding of how this all works. And with this current tragedy going on in LA, we see more of those characteristics that we saw in Maui. And but I do feel more hopeful in this sense because people here are not going to stand, they're not going to stand for it. I don't think the way that people in Maui, the people here are different. I feel like they have more of a fight in them. Whereas in Hawaii, it's just so difficult to get by. It always was, but especially now. And I just think a lot of the people who lost everything, they're dependent on the FEMA resources, and they're also waiting for a payout, which has not been given to them. There's supposedly a $4 billion payout from HECO that are supposed to go to the victims. That hasn't happened, but a lot of them are kind of waiting for that to happen before they come forward. And I don't know if that
Traci,
day
they
will
need to
ever
move.
come.
They need to move to the Ukraine. Didn't they know that?
Yeah, I know they exactly when that happened, that's where the money went when Lahaina was in, they had the most need, and they still have a great need, and they're getting so little. And so that's really how I got my start in this, and I never looked back. So,
Thank you for that. So, Shane, take it away.
All right. Well, my name is Shane Buell, and I started out as like a research assistant for Traci, and then became a regular guest on the channel. But then over the months, we ended up writing the book together, which is called "Sound the Alarm: The Maui Disaster, Which Sparked a Global Awakening." And I first got interested in this topic before Maui. So I had a friend that lived in Northern California back during the campfire in Paradise. And I had seen some of the photos that came in, and it just looked a little odd to me. I've always been into physics, and ever since 9/11, I've been kind of researching the melting points of materials and things like that. And so what I saw in Paradise was, melted metal and melted glass, and homes just reduced to a white ash that's not even really got much soot in it, no black or gray. It's mostly white. And so it looked really odd to me, and I figured that it could be, directed energy weapons. I didn't look too deeply into it at the time, but then after Maui happened, it was like Paradise, but way like another order of magnitude beyond that. So, they burned down the whole city of Lahaina. And once again, we saw the melted metal, the melted glass. It takes about 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit to melt glass. So a lot of porcelain was also missing, like toilets and things like that. And porcelain, it will stay intact up until about between 4,000 and 5,000 degrees. And so the fact that all of these materials had broken down in the way they did, and yet there was green trees that were still unburned right next to, adjacent to completely powdered homes. And also the blue items. I've seen a lot of blue items that survived relatively intact that were directly adjacent to things that were powdered and melted. So it really stuck out to me as the potential use of directed energy weapons. And so I decided this one I'm going to research in, and dive in, with both feet. And I spent many, many months researching the fire from, I would say, August until December. And that's when I felt like I had enough information compiled at that point to be certain. And so then I shared that information with Traci on her channel, and then she had me present the material, and that was about a year ago. And it's been a crazy year ever since, because ever since Maui, we've seen other places that burned in the same fashion. Like you have Chile, Valparaiso, and Viña del Mar in Chile. Those actually did also have smart city plans that were accompanying those. They had just had a smart grid conference in Viña del Mar right before, like the month before the Chile fire. And then after that, we saw the Smokehouse Creek fire in Texas. And it's just been one fire after another ever since. Once fire season officially started on June 1st, We saw the Corral fire in Traci, California, and it's just been one fire after another. And even after the end of fire season, we're still seeing these fires, even in January. So now the Palisades and Altadena have burned, and these fires have exploded out of control. And yes, the wind is a factor, but the wind is also doesn't seem to be natural. Santa Ana winds are usually kind of seasonal, and they typically, this current outbreak of like Santa Ana winds and fires in Southern California, ever since the Line Fire and the Mountain Fire and the Malibu Fire and now Palisades, these winds have just come out of nowhere. And it seems like it could be engineered wind that always seems to accompany these fires. But these fires, in my opinion, the ignition source is directed energy weapons. And I've done a lot of research into that. I uncovered a patent from 2002 that combines hybrid technologies. So it uses a pulse laser to they use a ring of pulse lasers to create a conductive tube of charged air particles, which will reflect microwaves. And so when they pump the microwaves down that tube of charged particles, it's like an air duct or a water pipe, and they can direct the microwaves to a much smaller area than it would be if it was like a normal conical beam. And so that's how I think we're able to see these microwave effects limited to very small areas. One example I like to use is the Pentecostal church in Lahaina, which appears to have experienced a phenomenon of electrical induction. And we know that when metals are exposed to microwaves, the microwaves induce eddy currents through the metals, and those eddy currents will cause resistive heating, and anything that's in proximity to the metal will ignite. And we saw that in all of these fires pretty much since even Santa Rosa. Almost every big fire that we've seen since Santa Rosa has been anomalous, and I'll just say that. But in almost every single one of these cases, there's been also some sort of ulterior motive behind these fires. So we've all heard probably by now the smart city theory, and a lot of these places do have smart cities. Maui, and now I've just now heard about the LA smart city for the 2028 Olympics. And so they only have like 4 years to get going on that. And so it looks like, this could put them on track for that redevelopment. However, we've seen in other disasters, like in North Carolina, the existence of really rare earth minerals that are under the surface there, such as lithium. And that does also corroborate with some of the other disasters that we've seen. So whether it's minerals or whether it's smart city, these motives kind of overlap, but it seems like it's definitely directed energy weapons.
Yeah. And then something
Yeah.
that we learn is that this is not, I always have this theory where it's not black and white. Most of life is gray. So there are so many levels and layers to why these things are happening. And I do like to discuss this because I think it's important that people just face reality and realize that the people in charge are really this evil. They're trying to take away fire insurance from people's homes, and then weeks later, their house burns down. And I think people, especially here, are really catching on to that. And we need people to get angry. We need people to hold people accountable. And that's one thing that I feel like is happening with this fire. And a lot of these celebrities that were in the Palisades lost their homes, and they're speaking out, and they're saying that we're going to have people accountable. And Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, has been confronted pretty aggressively on why she reduced the funding for firefighters and why she sent a lot of equipment to the Ukraine not too long ago. Also, she happened to be missing from the country when this happened, which is another theme we see that's happening with a lot of these things. She was in Africa, and she comes back, and I think she was kind of speechless when they asked,
Yeah.
"Do you have anything to say for the victims of this fire?" She didn't even know what to say. I mean, come on, say something, show some sort of sympathy. I think she's just kind of similar to Mayor Biston in Lahaina. They're just kind of dumbfounded as far as what's happening. I don't think they really understand. I think they're learning now, but hopefully in this situation, Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, even some of the people in the fire department who have been complicit with this narrative will be held accountable. And we also know now that the traffic jam in the Palisades, the fire department did tell those people they need to get out because the fire is coming, but then they threw this narrative saying that, oh, it was just a stampede, one person left and everyone else left. But I see them trying to put this narrative, and it might have worked with Maui, but I really hope that someone is held accountable, because till this day, not one official in Maui or in Hawaii has apologized or say that they wish they had done something different, or, that they feel bad for their actions. Not one has admitted that something went wrong, and no one has been held accountable. I mean, the police chief has his commissioners defending him at all of these meetings, and people just want to know, why did the roads get blocked? Who did that? Who gave that order? They just refuse to answer. And people are fed
Can
up,
you
but
can you
yeah.
give a little bit of a background on the police chief and his former position in Las Vegas and the disaster he oversaw there?
Yes. So Chief John Pelletier was installed as the Maui police chief in 21, but he came over from Las Vegas Metro as a captain, and he wasn't the incident commander like some people think. He did write the after action report for the shooting at the Mandalay Bay Resort, where that is still to this day the biggest mass casualty shooting in the US, where 59 people lost their lives and many more were injured. And if you look into that, you'll see that the narrative that they gave, that it was a lone gunman that lost his mind and did this, is just completely unrealistic to believe. But they somehow were able to write a after action report saying that that was the story and that's what happened. But he was installed as police chief against the will of the people, against the will of the department that he now oversees. He was supposed to have been a resident of Maui for at least a year, and it's been that way for as long as the police department has existed. But they, kind of overthrew the rule and let him become chief. In Hawaii, chiefs and sheriffs are not voted on. The commissioners decide on who becomes the police chief. And we really dug into how that happened. And there are a lot of rules that were broken in order to get him as police chief. He is still in that position and doing his job as best as he can. But, it was really one of those things where we can't believe that he was involved with that, did the after action report there, and he also did the after action report for the Lahaina fire. So that is just something that we can't forget that. And for someone that's willing to cover up a horrible situation that happened in Vegas, probably has no problem doing what he's doing in Lahaina, making those orders to block people in their cars. And a lot of people, we have footage of this, were they died in their cars. And
Doesn't he have Traci? Doesn't he have sketchy globalist connections too? I remember when this all came out. Has that been validated? There was a lot of rumors about that with his connections with certain folks going over to
like he's
Davos, and or he had been to Davos himself or something, and he was also related to some, and maybe you might know, Shane, related to some of the smart city stuff.
That sounds a lot more like the governor, in my opinion, actually. But they do have a very corrupt police chief, and the only way to keep a police chief in there that's that corrupt is to have the commission on his side. And we've seen time and time again that the police commission will take the side of the police chief against that of the people. There was about a month or two ago, there was a police commission meeting where they had a review of the chief, and people came in to give their public testimony, and it was very heated. But the commission sided with the police chief as usual. And it turns out that the police commission itself on Maui is also somewhat corrupt, as they committed ethics violations in the selection process of John Pelletier. They actually gave him they gave him like a cheat sheet to the answers that he was going to be asked during the interview process. So when the candidates all submitted their answers, John Pelletier not only had like 28 pages of answers to submit, but it was exactly tailored to fit what the commission wanted to hear. And so he was able to, get put into that position. And then he has since racked up many, many complaints within the department, some of which have been substantiated and they may actually win in court. But until that process gets drawn out, he's still going to be in place, and he still has had no sort of actions taken against him as far as disciplinary. So he's got, free reign over the island. And it's really disappointing to see how extensive the corruption is, because it extends to the police commission and to the mayor as well, because those are all the people that would be able to hold the chief accountable. However, we've seen the mayor as well. He's basically he has a lot in common with the Los Angeles mayor, as well as being silent on the questions when he was asked about the missing children. He basically shut down the interview at that point. So yeah, we've seen a lot of politicians and people in places of power in Maui that are in on the corruption, and that extends to Herman Andaya, the guy who didn't sound the alarm, who was the Maui Emergency Management Administrator, and it also includes the fire chief was sent away on vacation. He was away on vacation. The governor was away on the mainland. The MEMA administrator was off island on another island at a FEMA conference with Bob Fenton, who was the regional FEMA coordinator, and General Hara, who was the adjutant general. And they all seem to be in on it. I think they kept the locals out of the loop, at least the ones who were there on the ground. They were basically kept out of the loop, and they were told that the situation was not as extreme as it was. And I think even Mayor Bisson at some point was kept out of the loop, because he went on the news at 6 p.m. that evening and said that the roads were open to Lahaina and everything was fine, but the fire had already reached Front Street at that point and people were in the water.
It's always interesting when you look into the background of these actors, because the LA mayor, which came to light, long before the fire, starting in the 70s when she was a young woman, she was part of a group that would regularly go to Cuba for training in Marxism and communism, to bring communism to this country and destroy us from within. So, just maybe unrelated, but it's curious how they always have these kind of sordid backgrounds. One question I wanted to ask you about, something came to light with somebody with this LA fire relative to smart meters kind of burnt from the inside out. And there's a woman, a well-known whistleblower, Deborah Tavares, and I got this from a group that I was involved with. And I was told they were on their way to her house right before the Santa Rosa fires, ignited. And then it happened, so they canceled the meeting, and then she went back in the aftermath. Total destruction in her entire neighborhood, except for her house. The one thing that was unique about her house, because she was an educator about smart meters, is she did not have a smart meter on her house. So anything you can speak on with that?
I can say just real quick, I don't know as much as Shane, but we know Deborah personally, and she was instrumental in allowing residents of California to opt out of the smart meter.
Right.
I guess they're trying to force people on it, but in California, you have the right to opt out. I believe in Hawaii, you still do, but the lack of awareness is allowing a lot of people to have that change without realizing what they're doing. But that's as much as I know about the smart meters. But we did find a lot of evidence in Maui with these smart meters completely burnt from within, the wiring is melted, but the box is okay. But I think Shane, you know a little bit more about how that could be administrating the fires from within.
Yes, I do. And speaking of Deborah Tavares, she actually had tipped us off to the Malibu fire days in advance. And so we were actually able to put a warning out. We put a post on Facebook, or not Facebook, but on YouTube, the day before the fire actually broke out, I believe, because Deborah had warned us about the red flag conditions and the low humidities and everything that was going on down there. And it, sure enough, it happened. So in regards to the smart meters, they are basically transceivers for microwave energy. They put out this pulse of data that goes to the power companies that has all your energy usage information. But this pulse is transmitted via like a 5G frequency. It's a microwave frequency. And they can also receive the transmissions as well from the power company. So it's like a two-way transmitter of microwave energies. Now, if this smart meter were to be in the path of a much more powerful beam, I would say more powerful than 5G, it's still going to act as a receiving antenna for those microwave energies, and it's going to convert a high efficient percentage of that microwave energy into electrical induction. So the microwave hits the smart meter, induces those eddy currents, and those eddy currents cause a lot of resistive heating in the proximity around the smart meter. So I don't think necessarily that the smart meters are transmitting the frequencies, but they are receiving and relaying the frequencies, especially to any metal objects that are in contact.
And I think that's why we're seeing some of these fires start within the house, but they say it's from embers. Is that kind of what we're assuming? Why the fires are starting inside sometimes?
Well, it's interesting, and Shane, I don't know if Shane froze right there, but it is interesting because I'm watching in the LA fires right now, people in Altadena live trying to save their homes as homes around them are all on fire. So, and as a firefighter myself, I know that, yeah, embers getting into the eaves and stuff can definitely cause fires. But when you look at the aftermath in, like, as Bear was saying, up in NorCal, and then looking at the grid now from the Palisades fire that came out this morning or last night, did you see that with that whole valley? It looks just like the fires up in Sonoma County. It's the same kind of grid looking thing where every house is torched and then the trees are fine. Now, I know trees have, they have liquid in them and they have natural enzymes and oils to protect against fires. But when you have scorched earth homes that are white, right, and that is such a high heat, and then the trees right next to them are not even tinged with any kind of burning on the leaves, that does make your head scratch. And we're seeing that right now with the Palisades fire, that same aftermath.
But we do see trees in some of these fires burning from the inside out. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I've seen that in wildland fires I've been on, that the fire will get so hot it will go in the roots and then it will come up and it will burn the tree from the inside out. But I think going back to going back to Paradise, and I've done some streams on this with other firefighters for some summits that were on the ground there. I think this does come back to the atmospheric stuff they're doing with spraying, that these are tinder boxes, these forests now and everywhere because of all of the heavy metals on them and everything, and also the drying out of the oils from the trees. They're blaming the mass tree deaths on climate change and on specific parasites and pathogens. We had to actually treat our water with bleach when we were on the fire here, Bear, both times because of the concerns around the Port Orford tree getting a specific microorganism out of our water that would cause them to die. So we're literally bleaching our water that we're then spraying all over our forests, which is just the madness of sort of conventional scientism that we're seeing. And they're like I mean, it's such a huge issue, right, guys? Like, there's so much misinformation about the climate change and global warming and all that. But that being said, I think there's a massive multi-dimensional operation going on that is relating to weather warfare, weather manipulation, the decades of spraying, the smart meters, and then also relating to just the way that homes are being built in the last 30, 40 years. Like, they're not fire resistant. They go up like tinder boxes as is. I'll say this on the smart meter, thanks to Bear's education, we opted out when they were trying to transfer over to smart meters here. And a lot of our community did. And we were actually evacuated for 2.5 weeks last summer due to a massive wildfire coming down here. And our community wasn't didn't get nuked. And I think maybe some of that had to do with the fact that we still have a lot of analog smart meters here.
Just we'll let you guys jump in real quick, but to finish with another anecdote, what Mike's talking about, we live in a wilderness area. We're off grid, so we don't have to worry about smart meters or anything. But fires, we're told get used to the new normal. And, this was never normal when I was a kid growing up in Northern California. Now there's fires everywhere. And much of the fire management is contracted out to private corporations. So the private contractors. And this fire that Mike's alluding to here, there's right up on the ridge here, we had to go fight some ourselves because nobody would show up. And the neighbor who has heavy equipment took it up there and then was approached by a whole crew of private contractors and told to get out, that they had it handled and that we had no right to fight our own fires or contain them, and just kind of trusting, well, they got it handled, the help's here now. They deliberately let it go. And that's the one that absolutely engulfed us eventually and forced us to evacuate. And we thought we're going to lose everything to here. And, they always let it get to a point where it's absolutely devastating and, forcing evacuations. And then it seems like they come in the aftermath as a show, like they're actually trying to do something about it, but obviously way too late. So anybody, either of you that want to jump in with any thoughts on if you're seeing similar things, in Maui with the way they handled the fires?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit on Maui, and more recently, some footage I found or someone sent me from the Palisades. This last one, we're gonna have to put it on and show people, but there was this beautiful house that they saw the little fire was starting, and there were about 3 firefighters with their hoses just kind of wandering around. So I thought maybe they're waiting for the water to come through. I don't know exactly what was going on, but they waited for the fire to almost completely engulf the house before they turned the hose on, and it made it seem like they were trying to put it out, but they had the opportunity to put it out when the fire just started. Also, this issue of the lack of water is coming up again, and in Lahaina there was no water, and there's this whole narrative that this one guy, Manuel, I forgot his last name is Manuel. What's his first name?
Paleo Manuel.
Kaleo Manuel, they put a video saying that, kind of making him seem like he turned the water off, which I don't believe he had the authority to do. We think the lack of water was a lot more nefarious in that the weapons and the energies affected the metal piping, because we saw also images of water kind of coming up from the ground, and there were many reports of big puddles on the ground in Lahaina, yet there was no water in the hydrants. And yeah, we don't think that it has anything to do with turning the water off. And now we're seeing that narrative in the Palisades. I think the fire chief said, well, people left their sprinklers on, so there was no water pressure, so the hydrants didn't have any water. That just doesn't make sense because the whole area was evacuated, so a lot of people weren't using their water. Not everyone put their sprinklers on. So there's a much deeper explanation for that. But
Yeah, and it seems like at least in Palisades, some of the water mains had broken or melted, and I believe that to be the same case in Maui. And just like we've seen in a lot of these other fires, some of the fire will travel underground via metal objects like pipes and so forth. And so yeah, if that energy was conducted below the surface and it affected the pipes in such a way to either break or melt them, then yeah, that would explain why they lost water pressure and why we saw water shooting out of the ground.
Yeah, Shane, do you know much about, because one thing was big with Paradise, so it was very obvious this was a very hot fire, much hotter than a traditional wildland fire. And it seems like that's a great point, right? Like we're dealing with heat that is melting metal. We've seen molten metal rivers going down the street and then melting these lines. Have you done we have a buddy, Jim, the climate viewer, who had done some really great streams with our friend Topher Gardner on this, but relating to the electrical side of things and related to the direct energy weapons of somehow being able to conduct this heat that is far beyond a traditional incendiary sort of fire you would get from a wildland fire. Do you have any data on that, or have you broken that down at all related to Lahaina?
A little bit, yes. So a lot of what we see in these fires is not necessarily combustive flames, although combustive flames are like a secondary effect. They're kind of a side effect from the radiative heating that we're seeing. Now, different materials react differently to different frequencies, but metals, we've seen, react very strongly to microwaves. If you've ever stuck a fork in the microwave, you've seen what it will do to metals. However, water is also a polar molecule that has a positive side and a negative side. And when it's exposed to an alternating electric field of, say, 2.5 billion cycles per second, those water molecules are going to flip back and forth that many times every second. And it causes a lot of friction and a lot of heating. And so I think that's another way that we've seen this energy be conducted not just through metals but through materials that contain water, like the inside of the trees and the roots of the trees. And I do also want to touch on the climate engineering aspect of it, like stratospheric aerosol injection, also known as chemtrails. Just before the Maui fire, there was a haze that came in over the ocean, and they said there was heavy spraying. And I have recently gotten confirmation that the haze actually did have a smell to it. And there were some places where it seemed to have left a greasy surfactant film on surfaces. Some people said the ground was a little bit slick. So I think the chemtrails that contain aluminum and other various minerals, especially the aluminum, is a desiccant and a bit of an accelerant. And when that stuff gets to when it bioaccumulates to a certain degree within the trees and the ground cover, you're going to have it be more electrically conductive, and it's going to be more dry. So it's going to be easier to ignite. And then once it does ignite, it's going to catch on fire a lot easier.
We also have evidence of noxious chemicals, especially heavy metals like aluminum, settling down in the soil, because I'm a farmer here these days. And a lot of crops that were just thriving, a few years ago, the last couple of years, they're really struggling. So it's forcing us to use a lot of, we create teas with abundant microorganisms because they get in the soil and clean it up and cleanse the soil. But we just have to take all these extra measures. And then we'll also see plants thriving one day, and then all of a sudden the next day they're like burnt, for no reason at all. Showing burning, like they're over nitrogenated or something, but that's not the case because that's not the way we tend to our crops. And then also, of course, every time stuff falls from the sky, it's collected in the foliage, and that's of course going to make the fires burn that much hotter. But sorry, Traci, you were about to say something there.
Well, that just makes me think of some footage we recently showed when we interviewed Spice Prince, who barely escaped from Lahaina. There were pieces of land, like soil, that was smoking. So it seems like this years and years of spraying, but also that very heavy haze that was seen over Lahaina on the days before seemed to have made everything extremely combustible or flammable. And something else that I don't think a lot of people realize because they buried this information, but a lot of people in Lahaina died in the water from burning. I think a lot of them probably did drown, but there are people saying that they were on fire in the water. I mean, I don't know exactly how to explain that, but I know with Dane, he explained how all of this material, flammable material, toxins are actually building up in the water. And, you use a device that has microwave energy. Of course, that's going to affect the water. But it's just like Mike said, just all these different aspects that are, causing these severe, fast-moving fires with intense heat. And I think that's part of why a lot of people are not fully taking to this, because it's a lot more complicated to understand. And it's taken me, I'm still learning, but it took me a long time to even come to the realization that this had happened. And I noticed, and it's very sad. I have friends that live on Maui and Oahu, and it seems like the people that are most close to this tragedy are the least likely to accept these things. And very intelligent people are still considering this a natural fire with a lack of response. But I really hope, with each, tragedy, each fire, each hurricane, more people will wake up, and I believe that is happening. But we need that to happen much faster and a lot at a bigger scale. I'm always encouraging my viewers, if they have a platform to talk about this. Now, with the downfall of mainstream media, people such as ourselves are becoming the source of information, the source of news. And I'm always trying to get people to do their own research and present it on their own, or send information to me, and I would be happy to present good information. Um, but that is something that I'm learning, and it's a really hard fact to believe or to really take in. I have young children, and so now that I know all this is being put into their food, into the water. I used to let them eat hail and snow. Now I'm like, no, don't touch that, don't eat that. And it's become a lot more difficult, to raise children, and it's a lot hard on the heart. It's a lot of weight on the heart to learn these things, but we can't afford to continue to deny that all these things are happening. So I really appreciate you guys, trying to get the word out and trying to provide truth and a solid research to explain these things, because I think the days of playing on people's emotions, scaring them and saying that's not true and this is misinformation and there's no way the government would ever do this. I feel like the days of people understanding or believing those things are coming to an end. I really hope so. But I'm
Yes.
just
Well, I'll say one thing, Traci. Yeah, like our audience is already so aware of all this, and one thing that we're truly is a solutions focused community here, and we'll get into some of those today because, and like we're coming out of a health, podcast is how we got our start, and it's
yeah.
really our focus is that all of this is applicable, and that we need to know the cause of the symptoms first, which is what we're discussing right now, and
Mhm.
then once we are really familiar with that, which a mass awakening is happening around that, then there we can figure out the solutions. And yeah, I think number one solution is no more government. That's something we talk about all the time.
Mhm.
And then holding these people accountable through something like a notice of liability, not going through the legal system, but literally going to the individual, which we've done plenty of shows on. But it does come down to the end of each individual waking up and then taking action in their own life. It's a decentralized solution here. And
And
so you're right. It's the new media is playing a massive part. And I will say, just out of the Palisades fire, what we're seeing is like an immediate through like Instagram and TikTok and X and all these platforms, even LooshTube here and then others. We're seeing like immediate response in terms of like awakened people going, oh, I know exactly what this is. Like within 8 hours, we knew that water was shut off, that that the State Farm had cut funding for the insurance 2 months ago, that 17 million was cut from fire, like all of these things that line up perfectly with an obvious sort of planned demolition,
Mhm.
and that just spread rapidly across the interwebs. So there is a polarity here, right? There's like, as all this
yeah,
destruction's happening, and it's also like a massive awakening of people realizing what's going on, and the
Mhm.
and
solutions come out of that. So yeah.
and California is actually a red state. That would be surprising to most people because we just hear from people in San Francisco and LA. But if there's any silver lining in all of this, people are getting pissed off. And, people have been, as you said, Traci, apathetic and fearful. Anger, we don't want to stay in anger and have that induce violence, but it is an emotion that, starts raising your energy up into more of a mobilized, proactive state. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And, look no farther than the Governor Newsom, who stole his recall election, just obviously stolen. He would have been removed from office long ago. Of course, He's the nephew of Nancy, who heralds from a Baltimore crime syndicate through her father's lineage. So you look at all these actors, and they're just, you know, it's you can't make this up. And when every single one of them has this kind of background, literally, her dad was crime boss of Baltimore. So you know, it's incredible, but there is a silver lining. And, you know, I always liken to treating bodies because that was my vocation for my whole adult life. And when you treat a sick body, if you do it right, you're restoring balance, but in the process, all of the issues, all the root causes come to the surface. And sometimes it even looks like people are getting a little worse before they get better. And I believe that's the point we are as a people, not just in Hawaii and California, but across this entire realm, where everything's getting exposed. And if you really don't, like Mike says, come at it from a solution sort of mindset and look at it from a higher altitude, you know, you think that there's no hope, but I think right now there's more hope than ever, because when the sleeping giant is awoken, especially the native Hawaiian population, you know, once they get pissed off, look out. You know, the county council people and the governor and all, they better start bugging out, because the hunted are going to, or the hunters are going to become the hunted. And I think that's starting to happen right now.
Yeah, I really hope you're right. But you know, I've been in LA for a long time, and the people I deal with are often not your typical liberals, you know, Shane and pretty much everyone that I've met through this journey. And they're like, you know, there's this idea that everyone's liberal and everyone's a Democrat here. But you know, I've been telling Shane this, that a lot of us are secret, I guess, conservatives, because it's gotten to the point where, because of the social climate, it's become unacceptable to express any views that don't go along with the woke narrative. I'm really hoping that changes. I really do. I think it's about to, because this year with the Trump election, I actually saw stands of people selling Trump you know, merchandise, which with the last election, that would have never happened. That stand would have never survived. And then 10 counties did flip red, including Orange County, San Bernardino, and Riverside. Those are huge populations, which is really promising. And I believe even the area, I'm more on the west side, which is typically extremely blue, like I don't know, like 80% blue, is now getting close to 50-50, which is really a real accomplishment, I think. I'm hoping like little things that I'm doing and information that we're putting out is allowing people to open their eyes. And I do feel like everyone I know is not supportive of any of the decisions that Newsom and Pelosi are making, yet they still, you know, keep going. I don't know if they just don't realize what they're doing, or they just, their hands are tied and that's what they have to do. But I didn't follow the recall, but I know there was a recall attempt, and that was before I was really aware of things. But I think he's up for a re-election in 26 next year. So I'm hoping that there's a huge change, and I hope, yeah, this especially with this event, I think a lot of people are going to convert and think differently. And when I went to Camarillo and I talked to people when they had their fires, it wasn't as large spread as the ones going on now, but everyone I spoke to said that they agreed there was something not right, and this was not what they were being presented with. And so that was really promising to hear that, you know, in a private conversation, people understand these things, but I think a lot of people are afraid to speak their mind. But I really hope that's changing fast.
I would like to add that my disagreements with the current federal administration, and even those and even with those of Governor Newsom, they don't necessarily come from a conservative standpoint, but from a philosophical libertarian standpoint. So I am a philosophical libertarian and voluntarist, and I can pass as a conservative, but that doesn't mean I actually am one.
I will I'll speak for Mike as well because we have many conversations on this. We are both voluntarist if we had to put us in any kind of label box. So, yeah, not affiliated with any political party. We just want to be left alone and, leave other people alone and decentralize all the institutions so that all communities return to their God-given rights of self-determination. That's where we come from. So more philosophical, I would agree.
Yeah, because then we don't have state agents, state pawns working with corporations investing $250 million into a railway that goes nowhere instead of investing in a proper infrastructure. And that I think that high-speed railway, which I'm talking about in California, is a key factor here because
Yeah.
I've mentioned this in the past on a show. I had an inside track during the fires we had up here. We had really bad fires 2 years ago. It was the largest fire in the United States. We were evacuated forever, and I was on the fire with some other guys from all over the country. Really interesting intel from a lot of these firefighters because they're seeing it in person. But one of the cats I work with actually works at what we call the bug station on the border of California and Oregon. It's the classic, agricultural check station, but that is a Department of Agriculture, I believe, related. So, anyways, his boss was in a meeting with all of these big brass from California and all these different agencies, and they were out in the open talking about the mega cities that are being built, that are being planned to be built in the middle of Central Valley in California, where these like Bakersfield to Merced or wherever that's being built is literally where they're planning to build these mega cities. So these are mega smart cities that are being planned to route a lot of the Californians out of that or out in the rural areas out into. And they were literally talking about this out in the open. And this is not some conspiratorial buddy of mine. Like, this is just a guy that just grew up here and is working. He's like, dude, this is what they're talking about. And that's the plan. So we have to be aware of, right, of what the overall plans are, which are hundreds of years old, to then understand how we can counter those. So yeah, that's what that whole rail line, people are like, what's the point? Why? It's the middle of nowhere. Well, the point is to be able to actually transport everybody between these mega smart cities that they plan to pop up quite rapidly as they take over the old legacy cities and create those into smart cities that'll be probably foreign owned. So that's like the plan. And so what are the solutions here? That's where what we're always all about.
Right.
Well, I was going to say another thing with some of these railways, they're just curiously abutting FEMA camps for people that, who knows who they're planning on corralling up to put in those things. So, sorry, go ahead, Shane.
Oh, I was just going to make a comment on the North Valley Rail to Nowhere project, which is probably a pork barrel money laundering project, but they do intend to build those megacities and connect them via rail. And they also want to suppress automobile usage as well. So they want to get everyone out of the cars and into the rail, and they also want to move people out of what they call the wildland urban interface and more into the urban areas so that they can rewild the wildlands.
Do you think that's what's going on maybe with these current ones? So this last batch, I'm still learning, but I'm really scratching my head on, Silmar, Altadena,
Right. Yeah,
House.
so we have seen the LA Smart City 2028 project, but there is also an oil field under the Palisades. It does stretch from East LA beyond the Palisades under the ocean, but who knows what the actual intention is for the Palisades area. Whether there's going to be Olympic Games there or drilling, I really don't know.
Right. And also I'm
Another
learning.
thing, sorry, go ahead, Traci.
I have a friend that's actually watching her house in the Palisades, but it doesn't seem like the big areas are demolished like the news is making it seem. It seems like they're kind of like picking and choosing, like this house is demolished, this one's fine, this one. So I don't know if that's a strategy or that's kind of an accident or it's part of the way the technology is being administered. But yeah, seeing like Malibu and the Palisades being affected like that, and Camarillo, which are a lot of those estates were very large, valuable estates. I couldn't really kind of figure out how they were deciding on these areas. And with this round, they're very different areas. Like Silmar's not super heavily populated. Altadena kind of is. The Palisades is. But yeah, I'm always trying to figure out what the cause is, and I'm getting so many different explanations. I know someone said that when Trump comes into office, sanctuary cities and states are going to start losing a lot of their federal funding. So they're trying to get, he declared a state of emergency, I think, right when the Altadena fire broke out. So maybe they're trying to, with the timing happening in January, like they usually wait till June for these things to start, but maybe there's like this dash to kind of hoard the federal funding, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
One
There's
thing
also
that,
an interesting thing.
go ahead, Bear.
No, please, you go.
Oh, I was going to say one thing that had just occurred to me, which is another similarity with the Maui fire, was that LA had just had a thick, heavy, smelly fog right before this fire, which is very similar to what happened on Maui.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to add that just south of us in Humboldt County, in Arcata, there's a little state university there, Humboldt State, that is now turned into a polytechnic campus. And Hillary was documented as coming to this area a year or two ago, and to help lay the foundations of plans for Humboldt County. And also, as we speak, there are fiber optics that have been laid across the ocean into Humboldt Bay to make the Eureka Arcata area into this whole high-tech environment. So, yeah, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, didn't know about that one.
Yeah, it's apparent. So like the Altadena, Pasadena area, that's a lot of old neighborhoods too. We're seeing a lot of the old neighborhoods burning while I've seen like, mega big box stores untouched in that area. So, yeah, I mean, and I would say, Traci, one thing I don't think we want to discount about when you see pockets of homes that are protected, and this is something we were stressing through the community when this started, is that this is a spiritual war. And I truly believe that we have assistance, and Bear and I have talked about this in the past, and this is just our own spiritual beliefs, that we have assistance from higher realms, and we can call it the angels or whatever you want to see them as. And I've seen this even actually when we were, Bear, getting evacuated, and we were talking to some good friends that knew some farmers in Hawaii that were doing some work and spiritual work to protect their land. The fire literally went around their land.
Oh, right.
And didn't touch it. So we can use these faculties that we're starting to learn about more and more in the mainstream. Like the #1 podcast right now that just overcame, from what I heard from Rogan, is the telepathy tapes, which I shared on our Telegram, which is about a documentarian really going deep into these heavily autistic children that are fully telepathic, and it's right out there in the open. And this is becoming massive, most popular podcasts. And this kind of is going back to, right, like the Great Awakening. And while we're having all this destruction, we're seeing this flip side. And I just bring up that we have these innate powers and these abilities, and there's science around this too, to actually protect ourselves, even if we are in the path of a massive forest fire. Not only through specific architecture and how we build our homes now and all this stuff, but actually through the spiritual powers and the other technologies that we can implement to help protect ourselves in the line of fire. And I think some of these folks are probably been protected for what they've done in their lives, right? They've had their home protected. Others, like some of these Hollywood actors in the Hollywood Hills, you got to wonder how conveniently their homes have burned. They're on the Diddy list. They're on, up to nefarious things. And all of a sudden now all the evidence has been eradicated as well as the Hollywood Hills are on fire. So
Right.
lots of stuff going on here.
Yeah, it reminds me of a video I did early on, and I wasn't raised in a religious or spiritual environment at all. I don't think my parents really gave it much thought. I started my spiritual awakening about a year before the fire, 1 or 2 years before. And I think that is a big reason why I was able to kind of see things the way I do. And I did a video about Le'ali'i, which is a Hawaiian homestead in Lahaina that was not touched. I think of the, I don't know, 140 homes, maybe a handful were affected, and not even affected that much. And I did kind of put that, maybe it was being protected by the ancestors and the spiritual nature of that area and the spiritual nature of the culture. Of course, I got a lot of blowback for that, because a lot of people just will never get on board with that. But even the people in that area said it was as if the fire just skipped over this neighborhood, and they have no reason, they have no explanation for how this area was spared.
There's there's actually good explanations. Another thing we talk a lot about on our channel are waveform mechanics. People like Walter Russell, who helped our Western minds understand that, all that precipitates into our experience, our biology and our environment, is produced from our consciousness as initiating electrical events, and then the old alchemists understood how those go through different etheric mechanisms as well. And there are also technologically assisted processes that were first put out by people like Wilhelm Reich with orgone technologies that have actually evolved since his day as well. And so we understand that now with our own consciousness, we can play on these real elements that have been verified. Wilhelm Reich did an amazing job with real rigid scientific, studies and research to show that how our own consciousness plays on these living elements within our atmosphere, and can be controlled by us to offer protection, like Mike is talking about, and also to develop instruments that will project, different orgone fields and so forth to change the weather, that can actually supersede the weather modification that they're doing with different kinds of technologies, and also to give us protection if you are, number one, aware, and make that part of your belief system, and develop the ability to have a laser focus within your own being in order to counteract these things. But of course, in order to do that, you have to be educated first, and also you have to free yourself from the only real virus that's ever happened on this planet, which is fear. And once you're free of that, then you can really go to business and tap into our true potential. And of course, that's the real thing that the powers that shouldn't be are afraid of, is that we wake up to who we really are and start using our own faculties. And at that exact moment, and I think we're at critical mass right now, that's when it's game over. And I think we're just a gnat's hair away from that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I know I think it was Tucker Carlson bringing up that a lot of these things that we're seeing, I know a lot of people feel, especially where I am, very anti-Tucker, but he does talk about how a lot of these things, even like UFOs, these things that we're seeing, I know you guys are kind of in the Pacific Northwest. I've been obsessed with cryptid encounters, Bigfoot, and learning how some of these very unexplainable things happen surrounding that topic, and how the technologies that we're being, I guess, exposed to now have been around for thousands of years. It's just that we've been told that these things don't exist. The spiritual world is just a myth, and that everything needs to be proved with science. But I feel like this UFO thing, we're seeing that these are not new occurrences. These are phenomena that have been documented for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and been spoken about by traditions that date back, many, many thousands of years. And so I hope that a lot of people are taking these things that they're seeing with their own eyes and realizing it's part of a much deeper fact that I think a lot of us are trained to try to explain things with what they know, what they can prove, but I don't think that's the way to approach this, to understand what's going on. And I'm still learning, so I don't know too much about it, but it's I do feel the kind of spiritual awakening going on in the world. I think that the Bible has become one of the most sold texts now, like after not being a bestseller for a long time. People are starting to either go back to their spiritual roots or trying to discover what they are. That's what happened to me, shortly before this happened. And I do think it is key to getting to the point where you could accept what's going on right now. And I really hope that this picks up and, people find their own way of understanding their spirituality, and, that it's a lifelong journey. It's never going to come to an end. But I'm really glad you brought that up, because that has, I think, allowed me to do all of this. I don't think I would have been able to see things had it not been for my spiritual awakening. And I did, for the first time. I never thought in my whole life I would ever say that I've been guided by a higher power, because that was never really how I was raised. But I do believe that has happened to me in a very profound way. And yeah, I'm just very grateful that I'm meeting people that understand that, because a lot of people will just hear that and think I'm crazy. But I think that's becoming a normal thing now. So I'm
Yep.
really glad that
Yep.
to be a part of
And
that.
Shane, as a physicist, what are your thoughts on some of this?
Oh, well, I actually do have a spiritual side, and I do believe that this is a spiritual war as well as a physical war. And so I completely agree with all of the aspects, of getting in touch with yourself and being in alignment with divinity, and aligning free will with divine will. However, I do also know that it's a physical war as well, and I think that is where the science comes in. So we've all heard about the blue stuff. You could just paint your roof blue, and so the way the blue works actually, if you were to go to get a tattoo removed at the tattoo removal clinic, they're going to use a laser, and they usually start with a 1068 nanometer invisible infrared laser, which will remove most of the colors. However, it leaves behind blue, green, and red. And those are the colors that we typically do see left behind in these fires. Blue is the kind of most obvious one that people have been talking about since Maui. But in the Chile fire, I did notice a lot of green and red objects as well. So at the tattoo clinic, they will then go through with a 532 nanometer green laser, and that's actually in the visible spectrum. So I think if they were to use that widely, they would risk being seen actually by the naked eye. However, the 532 nanometer green laser will remove red colors, but then it still leaves behind the blue and some of the greens, because green contains blue. So then they need to use a between 710 and 785 nanometer laser, which I think is still in infrared range. It's just outside of the human ability to perceive. So it's technically invisible. But even then, they have trouble removing the blue colors, because blue is the least interactive color with light. There is even a type color of blue called non-photo blue, which is used in by comic book artists and by animators, so they can write on the animation film, and it doesn't actually get picked up by their cameras. And so this color coded thing is actually relevant, because I do believe that some of the at least the pulse laser that they use to ionize the air is it does have an optical frequency to it, and it will interact differently with different colors. And so when that is either scattered or reflected, it also scatters or reflects the microwaves that are contained within it. And so then there's also the then I was going to also touch on the aspect of electrical induction. So a lot of these homes that are burning down, they probably don't have surge protectors or very well grounded, like really thick gauge ground wires. And so, short of putting a Faraday cage around your house, you could probably re-engineer your ground wires to a thicker gauge, and use blue material whenever you can.
Okay. So you've been very generous with your time here, and we could, I know, talk a long time on many different things. If there's any final thoughts from either of you that we haven't covered that you think we should cover, and then also if you could tell our audience how to find your material, your wonderful podcast, and all the work you're involved with.
Okay, I didn't have any other topics, but the main way that I present my information is on my YouTube channel. It's Brush Junkie. So you can just type that in and find all of my information, all of the presentations we've made, and there's at least 130 on this topic right now. Also, the mauibook.com is where you can order the book that we wrote, and you can also get it on Amazon, but Amazon takes all of our profits. But you can get an electronic version and a paperback there. And the reason that I still think that that book is so relevant, regardless of the fact that people have moved on, is that as time goes on, the information and the documentation we made in that book has become even more relevant because all of these things are being seen over and over, repeated over and over again. And so, if there's someone that doesn't watch YouTube, I think it's a really good way to introduce someone with real research and facts about what's really happening.
Yeah. And I think the Maui fire is a really good example because it's kind of reveals the playbook as if the globalists have shown their hand as the model for which they plan to perpetrate these land grabs. So a lot of this actually comes down from the UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 agenda. And every locality seems to have a redevelopment plan that is basically in lockstep with these global plans. And it seems like they've infiltrated every level of, state, county, and, local officials. And I don't know, where that pressure is coming from, if it's like blackmail or bribery or what it is, but it seems like every locality has fallen in line. However, there has been a successful fight back against the smart city agenda. And one of the examples I like to use is Perez Zeledon in Costa Rica. They had found out on, I think it was April 4th of 2024, that there was going to be what they call an eco barrio, which is just the rebranded version of a smart city or a 15-minute city.
Eco barrio. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what they did was there's a writer by the name of Dustin Bryce, who writes for Interest of Justice, and he's kind of a constitutional lawyer, and he drafted paperwork that would actually force them to hold public testimony before they voted on these plans. And there was so much opposition to this that there was like a crowd outside of the building and they wouldn't let people inside. But he was able to hand that paperwork to a police officer who stuck it through the door. And once they read the paperwork and they realized they could not hold that vote without public testimony, then they shut the vote down. And ever since then, a lot of the county local officials that have been in support of that plan have kind of fallen away like dominoes. And now the only really big supporter is the mayor there. And once he gets replaced, then it looks like the smart city plans for Perez Zeledon, Costa Rica will be dead in the water. And I think every locality should do their best to spread awareness of these plans and to fight back against these plans.
Another thing we need to remember is the original structure of this nation. And we're unique in this way, is that there's a hierarchy. And the original hierarchy started with the individual. And the next step down was the township. The next step down was the county, then the state, and then the federal government was the lowliest, weakest form of government. And of course, what the sinister force does is they invert everything. So now we have all eyes on the federal government. We give it all our energy. Who's going to be the next CEO of United States Inc., when in fact we should all be doing what you guys have done, which is go to your local council meetings and really get after those people. And that's the way we take this thing back. And just thank you both so much for being here. And by the way, I wanted to mention that for the last several days, we've been in communication with our Maui kinship over there. And they have been really circulating the link for this podcast. And so we have a good Maui contingency that's watching right now.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
I'm really glad to hear that.
So much.
That's great to hear. And one other thing too, I think is important is we need to stop funding them. So stop paying your taxes. We've done some shows on that. Equity solutions, commercial solutions. And also figuring out better money systems, right? And just all around reinventing it all in parallel systems where we work together. And yes, it's good to take it to the courts and take it to the court of opinion, especially public opinion, and doing this sort of things. But maybe this is all a rebuilding moment, right? Maybe this stuff is happening because the old world's burning and we have an opportunity to build the new, and it's really horrendous with all the destruction going on. And I just want to say too, our thoughts and hearts go out to all of the Los Angeles friends and families that we know that have already lost their homes and their livelihoods. It's still happening right now. Like Traci, you said, you're 10 miles away from the fire. So massive protection going out to you as well, Traci, and your family. And man, this is going to be a wild year. I mean, we are what, 8-9 days into January, and look what's already happening. I heard too, like there was a massive event in islands in France yesterday, was it, that wiped out entire towns. I mean, this is global happening, and I'm going out to North Carolina in March for an event, and we'll be talking with a bunch of homesteaders and people that are raising the red flag around all this like poison toxins that they're finding now from the storm it's in the water there. And people are freezing now in these tent cities as winter's coming on. And it's just everywhere, right? The devastation's everywhere. But in the aftermath of that, we have an opportunity to build beautiful new ways of living. So there's always
one final comment about Maui is the spirit of the islands is still alive. And, you know, we lived within that for many years. And that will eventually win out. And so our prayers and
is that
thoughts,
banyan,
our hearts go out to the...
Is the Lahaina banyan tree, that's still there, right? Like that ended up...
They claim it's still alive, and that's so symbolic of what I'm talking about. Thank you for mentioning that. So, yeah, and we want to see the native Hawaiians reclaim their culture. And, you know, when we first went over there, we were part of that early California surfer culture. And there's a lot of parallels in the way our lifestyles are. And so when we went over, you know, we lived simply on the land. You know, we're in the lineup out there in the waters with, you know, with native Hawaiians. We all became, you know, friends and family. And so, you know, it's possible for people from different cultures to respect each other and live with each other. But of course, that is very different from the developers who are now trying to gobble up everything and do all the things that we're talking about. So, yeah.
They've done a good job dividing the natives from somehow turning them against other groups. So,
Traci, you could also look into the In Power movement our friend Cal Washington started, which is doing, and I think if Hawaiians could get behind this and do a mass action, they're starting another wave where essentially what they're doing is they're doing affidavits and holding individuals accountable via notices of liability for the smart meters, for the 5G towers, which we didn't really get into, which plays, you know, a big role in this. And then also now they're getting into geoengineering and also the quaxine stuff, which we didn't touch on either today, which plays a big role in all this too, and nanotech and all that. But yeah, check that out because, you know, with your platform and getting people involved, once again, pinpointing these nefarious characters who are evil that are part of they're just basically like the middlemen, right? That, like you're saying, like the mayors don't even totally know everything that's going on, but they're still complicit. They're still doing things, and we can actually hold them accountable through these specific lawful processes. And they're finding that people are resigning. These CEOs are resigning, and people are getting scared in these positions of quote unquote power because of these types of processes. So there's a lot of really good people out there doing amazing things, and In Power is one of them.
And last comment, I promise. One thing that people that own property in Hawaii, if they take their warranty deed, do a quit claim, and secure their original land patent, that will get rid of the co-ownership that they have assigned to the state that the state then uses to usurp authority and tell you, no, you can't rebuild on this land. It's the warranty deed that is the contract that they hide behind. So get rid of that, get your land patents. We've also done several episodes on that, as well as done workshops here at our farm on it with some of the best land patent experts alive. So thank you both again.
Can I ask Traci one last question, Bear? Sorry, we didn't really get the final thing on it. What is the where are we at with the lost children of Maui? Because people are still asking about this. Do we have any definitive answers around this?
No, we've been asked this many, many times. What we've assumed is that many of them are no longer, with us, and that their families are no longer with us, so they don't have anyone to speak up for them. Also, we're hearing that I guess this is more of a cultural thing. The people on the ground who are in the know are starting to take offense to this question. And so they're just pushing back, saying there are no missing children, there are no missing children, but there has been no evidence, solid evidence of an abduction or anything like that we've been able to find. Okay. So I wish I could provide better information, but that's as much as we know.
Well, thank you for that. Well, hey guys, thanks for your time today. Everyone go check out the Traci's YouTube channel at Brush Junkie 6384. That's all in the show notes below. Check that out. Definitely help them out. Purchase their book. Any other links to share before we say toodaloo for the day?
TheMauiBook.com, and that's where you can get our book, Sound the Alarm.
Yeah.
The MauiBook.com. I will make sure to add that in the show notes as well. Awesome.
All right. Thank you guys so much for having us.
Yes. Thank you very much, Bear.
Aloha.
All right.
Aloha.
Aloha. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us today. Remember to get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, show Mother Nature some love. She is here to help us out. Let's get reconnected. And thanks for joining us on the live chat today. We'll see you next Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Love you guys. Peace. Stay safe out there.